Good evening, everyone. Absolutely my pleasure to welcome you all to UEA. My name is Christine Cocker. I am Professor of Social Work and Head of the School of Social Work at UEA. This event is to celebrate the scholarship of Dr Cynthia Okpokiri, who has won the prestigious Kay McDougall Award. And you're in for a treat tonight, people. It's her lecture is really good indeed. There's two people I would like to introduce you to just before I hand over to Cynthia. The first is Professor Vasilios Iacoumidis, who is from the University of Essex and the editor of the British Journal of Social Work. He is with us tonight and will say a few words in a minute. And secondly, I would like to introduce Dr. Ruth Allen, who is the Chief Executive of the British Association of Social Work, and they are hosting the event tonight. Thank you very much, Ruth, and I know you'll come online after Cynthia has spoken to facilitate some questions and answers. So I've been asked to introduce you to Dr. Cynthia Okpokiri. Cynthia joined the University of East Anglia only last year in November 2021. So she's been with us for a year. And in that time, she has already made a significant contribution to the life of our school. How could she not? She's produced this most fantastic paper in the British Journal of Social Work. And we are really proud of her achievements and really proud to call her a colleague here at the school. Cynthia did her MA in social work at the London Metropolitan University and completed her PhD at the University of Sussex before working at Anglia Ruskin University for 4 years, and then she's come to UEA. So well done you. It's so great that you are part of our staff group here at UEA. I'm so proud.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Vasilios to come up and say a few words about the award now.
Oops, sorry. Thank you. Just put my here. Does that work? So good afternoon, everyone. Dear colleagues, Dr. Okpokiri, Cynthia, it is for me and my co-editor-in-chief, Reima McLeilich, who cannot be here with us tonight, the most gratifying duty to present you the BJSW Kay McDougall Prize. The prize is awarded to the best article and the most impactful article of the journal, as recommended by the editors, decided by the editorial board, and confirmed by BASW. Now, the selection process for the paper is impartial and rigorous, focusing on the following criteria: breadth of scholarship, sophistication of theory, rigour of research, relevance to practice, and international appeal. Indeed, Cynthia, your article, Parenting in Fear, Child Welfare Micro-Strategies of Nigerian Parents in Britain, is epistemologically groundbreaking. It is also scholarly sound and allow me to say, politically assertive. Your research has demonstrated how the ethnocentricity of child protection systems in the UK and elsewhere in Europe and North America, I would add, often misrecognizes and sometimes even demonizes the parenting skills and methods of Nigerian or diasporic families. It is therefore a system that ignores the strengths of diasporic communities, a system that fails to appreciate the richness and complexities of parenting in diverse societies. In response, as you have demonstrated in your research, Nigerian parents do resort to micro-strategies that can range from active participation to, sadly, isolation. Let's not forget that it was such misrecognition of Black and minority ethnic communities that fueled the recent waves of protest both in the UK and the US, these smaller streams of discontent that led to the river of resistance that was the Black Lives Matter movement. So your research has particularly helped us to better understand those complex dynamics. So your study, Cynthia, has also added to ongoing debates about the creation of alternative protection systems, child protection systems, systems and approaches that focus on empowering families, systems that focus on holistic and non-stigmatizing ways. Cynthia, you have explored those critical issues in a nuanced way and without romanticizing or essentializing the communities you work with. It is for these reasons that I'm delighted to present you with this award, which is somewhere there, and I cannot reach. Can somebody help us with the award, please?
Does it end up going back in the box? There you go.
So congratulations.
Thank you very much. I am truly humbled, honored. I couldn't have dreamt this at all. If you asked me to dream something, I wouldn't have dreamt this. I was born and raised in Nigeria, and I came here as an adult. And at no point in that journey could I have dreamt something like this. And I thank you so much. I thank the panel, I thank the British Journal of Social Work for actually accepting the article in the first place. I thank the people who supported me, who helped raise me, put me together to get to this point. And how did I start? After I arrived here as an adult, I did my master's in social work at London Metropolitan University. And then I started practicing. While I was practicing as a child protection social worker in Greater London, I noticed that there were so many Black Africans, there was a sense of overrepresentation. And I started asking questions, and I would ask so many questions, the senior social workers, the managers, and I think people got a bit exasperated with me, and they said, well, go and study it then, go. And I thought, yes, I will. And so I went off and applied to University of Sussex, and the wonderful Professor Elaine Sharland accepted my application and she supported me. I say that because I am a Nigerian parent now living in Britain, but I wasn't at the time. I got pregnant during my PhD, and you can imagine what that was like. I got pregnant again, and imagine when I told my professor, my supervisor, that I was pregnant a second time, I could just imagine, see the wheels just churning in her mind, like, how are we going to do this? She kept a straight face, I would say, but I could just imagine what was going on in her mind. And she held me up, and she held me strongly and held me tightly, and I finished it. So I want to say thank you to her. I thank you, everyone here. I am thanking the participants, the Nigerian parents who provided me with such rich data. And so I'm a nod to them. I'm dressed in contemporary Nigerian attire. And let's get into it. Let's talk about what happened during that research. I'm going to try and share my screen. Okay. Can you see that? All right. So I will get straight in. What are we talking about today? These are the lecture themes. That's where I'm going with this. Nigerian parents, and I've put that in line with Black African parents in Britain for a reason. Nigerians make up 25% of all Black people that you will meet in London. That's according to the ONS. And I'll talk about their fears and hopes, as well as what they aspire for their children. Towards the end, or through it all, actually, I'm going to be doing something called explanatory critique. It's grounded in critical realism. It's a stance, a philosophical stance about understanding the world, and it's how you theorize and linking theory to practice. So I'm going to do that throughout the work, throughout my discussion. Who are the Nigerian parents? There's a small history, and I'll touch on that very quickly. Nigeria and Britain have a relationship, very long relationship, and it started before colonialism, I would say possibly when, during the slave trade. And that relationship carries on because Nigeria is part of Commonwealth. The history of Nigerians being in the UK then links to my work in the sense of child rearing. Child rearing across Nigeria very much echoes what happens in Sub-Saharan Africa. I use the term Sub-Saharan rather than Sub-Saharan because there's a connotation to sub as a slightly negative term. And so when I say Nigerian, bearing in mind that Nigerians will make up a large population of every Black people you see, Nigerians will be high in that number, I will interchange Nigerian Black African. Who are they? They have certain norms, certain values, foods and things that are, let's say, unique to Africa. But we're talking more now about childcare. The Nigerians are spiritual people, so not necessarily religious people. When it comes to their dressing, there's something called asoebi, where dressing is a mark of identity in the sense that shared family values. So family members will wear the same type of attire. Imagine dressing your 3 or 4 children in the same clothing, exactly the same fabric. Young children here, I don't think will like that, but that's how the Nigerians dress, and it's called asoebi. They are very passionate people, and sometimes they've been accused of being aggressive. But you will also maybe start to sense the passion as well, because I'm exactly like that. Even though when I was studying this, I wasn't studying myself. Some of the key research themes from my work were around these, like childcare and values, about the values, fears and aspirations, and something that I call layered reality. And I draw this again from critical realism, even though the substantive theory that I used was Honnett's recognition theory. Then I'll talk about the role of social work because I was big in the work as well. I'll go straight into something, one of the comments by the participants. And this kind of encapsulates everything that I was thinking, or the data that I had from the participants. Pay attention to some of the keywords: education, shelter, food. So this person is describing what happens, what Nigerian parents do. They try their best to provide education, shelter, and food to their children, and they struggle to do this. And they're asking you that you should do something. They're speaking to the child. The child has to abide by the settings of the home. What is the settings of the home? I want you to think about this because the way this is framed is in Nigerian colloquial. So when they mean settings of the home, they're talking about the way the home is run, the parents' views, the parents' values as well, because they're talking about the values of the family. And they say the parents go all the way. What does that mean? To provide for the children. And they want 2 things from you: your best education. So you need to do very well at education, and you have to be a good child. But what does a good child mean? And they're saying here, the lady says, when people see me, they say my parents did well. So she's seen herself as successful. I am the successful child. So what does success look like then? A successful child is a child who has respect for their parents, respect for other people in authority, other individuals. And so in this sense, think about social work. So respect for social workers, respect for teachers, respect for adults, other adults in their lives, and then respect for norms and customs. And this is interesting because respect was so big, and I'm thinking, respect? And I know everyone here is thinking, where is discipline, physical chastisement? I thought that's what the Nigerians were really interested in. But respect was big, and I wonder, what was respect? Why? Why is respect an issue? They saw a child who didn't have respect as an abused child. So if you don't teach them respect, you've abused the child. You didn't train the child properly. It's child abuse. Another participant says, you can't talk back. In Yoruba setting, basically in Yoruba language, in Yoruba towns, in Yoruba places, wherever. And this cuts across, so it wasn't just Yoruba, but this is one of the participants, that today, modern day, looks down on such values as respect and regard them as forms of abuse. So if you insist on your child being respectful, our society now, modern day, thinks that that is abuse. And they're getting these from social workers because the parents are trying to teach their children to be different, to respect, yet our modern day society is saying that is abuse. And the parents are saying, if you don't, that is abuse. Now think back to the ways that we understand, where Hammett says that when you have values that are not recognized, other people's ideas, knowledges, especially people on the margins of society whose knowledges and values are not recognized, there is an injustice there. But there is a difference here. And this person is saying it's very important for me. It matters. I would have done right by my child. So I think back, is it really true that our society doesn't value respect, British society? Because this is what the parents were saying to me, that when they try to teach their children to be respectful, they get a pushback from society, from the authorities. Maybe you're being too hard on the child, you're being authoritarian. And so there's that question, what's going on here? And I'm going to apply some reasoning to that. And I'm thinking that in the past, with all the serious case reviews around children who died and who were abused, there was an element that the children couldn't speak out against their abuser. Maybe the abuser was in a position of authority and was able to use that. So respect, to some extent in our current society, became a bad word. But then when I put it back to the parents, they said, but the British are known for three things. British people are known to be polite, to be pragmatic, and to be diplomatic. So why do you want all these precocious children running around able to say anything to anybody? And they couldn't understand that. And then when I look at today's modern day Britain, at least since Brexit, people say things to other people that you would not have heard. I'm talking about people in power, people in positions of authority. There seems to be a lack of pragmatism, a disrespect for everyone else. So there are tensions here. And so when I'm thinking about layers, because I'm thinking from critical realist perspectives, the layers that are there in society, then I'll take you somewhere, the children themselves. This participant says that she supports that argument here in Britain, that the children should speak out, that they should do things and stand up to people in power and people in authority, that she likes it. She likes that we're able to do that here in Britain. But then that the children know this and that the children abuse it. And I'm thinking, okay, let's think about what happens in society today. The parents are on the one hand saying, you should do this, you should respect, you should do this. But there are other things that are making the children not do what the parents want, including the idea that this person has, that the society has got it right and the parents have got it wrong. Again, the participants are saying, if you don't have that, we can't care for you. And to care for a child, you have to have discipline. I was listening to Radio 4 last month on the 5th of October, and the BBC presenter said, when authority is undermined, discipline breaks down. Where do you get authority from, and who has authority? That's a question that is playing with parents who are unable to, in a sense, have that control or authority over their children, which is why they're feeling disrespected. But the parents are getting their disrespect not just from the children, they're getting the disrespect from social workers. So there are a number of things that are going on there. And another parent says, there are certain things that white children know. The white children know how to get out of trouble because they know the law. He's using colloquial speech here, he's saying they know the law. But the black children, African children, play into the authorities' hands and then they get into trouble. I don't think he means law there because these children are raised here. I think what he's trying to say is the white children understand how to work with the authorities. So it's not about the law. And there lies your answer. There is something in respect that allows you to get ahead. And what is that? I am a Republican, okay? So it means that, yeah, I think one person, one power and things like that and one vote. But if I met a senior member of the royal family today, I would courtesy very deeply. I will abide by whatever protocols, whatever policies. But these parents feel that their children don't have that. They don't have that skill. They don't have that understanding of how to, as he says here, play the system. And I'll tell you why. Black children see injustice. The little slights they get from teachers, they get from the police, or the big slights that they get from the police, they get from everybody around them. And if you know anything about children, children have an acute sense of justice. One of the most common phrases around children is, it's not fair. That's not fair. So children have a very strong sense of fairness. And so when they see the little and big injustice against them almost every day, Black children get this. They turn around and they know something that they think their parents don't know. And so when their parents talk to them, there's an undermining of authority there. You don't know what we know. These people are not good people. We're not going to respect them. I'm not going to respect all of those people I meet outside of this home. And in fact, including you, I won't, because you don't know anything. So there's a sense that parents don't have the knowledge that children have. And something is going on there. There's a tension. And that tension is caused by something that's happening in our society. If you are an immigrant, you only have to read half the newspapers in this country today to feel like an ant. If you are Black, you will feel even worse. The society is replete with disrespect, total and complete, for Black people, for Black Africans. The comments around, did you come on a boat? I have been asked that by a doctor who was treating my child. known to my family. We were laughing, no problems, no issues whatsoever. And he turned around and said, "Did you come on a boat?" That's what Axel Honneth will call moral disrespect. And so when we see that there is a very clear social disrespect, also social workers do this. How do social workers do this? We do this in a number of ways. But let's go back to the children. A Black African child raised here in Britain will speak English with an English accent. The parent won't. I don't. And so you will get the parents who understand the power in that, not want their children to speak any other language, any Nigerian language. They only want English language. And so the parents were saying, "I don't want my child to learn any of those Nigerian languages. You speak to them in English, thank you." Why? There are some languages, especially English language in Britain, where accent is a bearer of class and privilege and power. And so what you get is, if you can speak English like upper class people with a certain accent, certain doors will be open to you. So language becomes a bearer of privilege as well as disrespect. I know this personally. When I call customer care companies, maybe telecompanies, whatever, when I call customer care, it takes me about 15 seconds before something happens. Hello, and talking to me. Then the minute they get my African accent, two things happen. The person changes. Either they become authoritative with me, or condescending, or they become casual and colloquial. You know, you're not deserving of respect. I can talk to you anyhow I like. I almost always get one of either. So there's something about the parents understanding that language can become a tool of power in the sense of just accent. The children also understand this. And that becomes a power tussle between children and their parents. Sometimes the children are interpreters for their parents, and imagine the power that lies within that. But you're looking at me today. I'm an immigrant, and here I am, just received the highest award of my life. And in Britain, having stayed here, lived here just less than 20 years, just about 20 years. I am a deserving immigrant. But why am I a deserving immigrant? The social workers who work with these families also know who is deserving and who isn't. If the person is able to acclimatize to British ways, Eurocentric ways, then they are deserving. They're fine. Why? If we look to some of the laws that govern children, including going as far as even the Poor Law of 1832, there is a long history, 200-300 years of written down legislation around children. The Black African parents and the Black Africans who come here don't have that. They have that in oral form. But that knowledge is disrespected completely. And so the social workers come to these parents with an epistemic arrogance. We've worked it out. We use these systems, we understood it this way, it's all written down, all codified, and you know nothing. And the parents can sense this from the hello, right from the hello. They know that the social workers think that they know nothing. All around us, the parents and the children receive the same subliminal messages of disrespect that are given to Black Africans. Their children receive the same messages. You all here receive the same messages. I receive the same messages. And recognition theory tells us that that is an injustice because our knowledges, our values are not recognized as authentic and obviously as credible. This brings a lot of fears to the parents. At the get-go, they think we are doing something wrong. We're not good enough. Our children will be removed into care. So the minute they see social workers, that's all they are thinking. They're going to judge me. They think I'm not good enough. They're also worried about their children's reaction because the children have a certain power given to them through the subliminal messages sent to Black African children. Yet these children are helpless against the same forces out there, and their parents know this. But the parents are worried that the children will reject them. That's one of the fears they have. And they're also worried about failing, not just in Nigeria where they have left and moved to a new country, that they might fail here. So there's layers of failure and fears there. And this participant puts it quite clearly, and she says, I know something because I've seen it out there. I'm worried about their safety. And she thinks that people put all these labels and things, but she knows something. That if something happened to the children, will call the police on her, she said, if she does something. And she understands what she's saying. And I'm saying this so that you can understand the ways that these parents are theorizing what's going on. Another parent there says that the private schools, so what we call public schools, have very tight discipline. Children are made to respect. They're taught respect. But somehow, when it comes to parents who do not have power, their children are allowed to be precocious until they are not. And these parents hope that something's going to happen to help their children out of that system, out of the system of failure where a parent would have failed. And they think education would do that. So parents, education, education, education. And if you know anything, you would know that the Nigerian children and Nigerians in Britain are the most educated Black group, Black demographic in the UK. So there is something in that message. They think that's how their children are going to get out of that trap, which they think disrespect plays a role, misunderstanding and misrecognition plays a role. They want their children to think in a collective way, where others can look after you, when you respect people outside, they become part of the collective. That's what they're thinking. Someone else. And think about the phrase that we know, what we say, child safeguarding is everybody's responsibility. It's very much a Nigerian way of thinking and an African way of thinking. So what is it ultimately that I'm trying to say here today? I'm saying the social workers have power. They have power to change things for the Black African children, for their parents. They have the power and the duty to intervene. And when we remove children, we become corporate parents. The Nigerian parents are saying, don't be corporate parents only when you remove them. Be corporate parents when you come knock on the door. Do the collective parenting. And in that collective parenting, they're saying that if you share respect around, you can do corporate parenting well. Do you remember one of the slides where the person said, the children, I can ask my neighbor to look after the child and I can ask them to discipline the child. And I know that they can do well, they can look after my child. That's part of what they're asking here. So when you come into a home, don't leave the crime scene without cleaning it up. As you connect with the parents, we need social workers to connect with the children and help the children see that their parents are legitimate. Despite the society's ideas that Black Africans in the UK are illegitimate people, there are all sorts of illegal people, illegitimate people, people who do not have the moral rights and sometimes even the legal rights to be in the UK. The social worker can change that, can change the narrative with the children So it's not just coming and beating the parents for sometimes real wrongdoing. Connect with the children, do the collective thing. And in this slide, I'm saying that the children need to respect their parents. It's obvious there. Children have to respect the authorities in order to survive, knowing that the participants said that the children don't understand how to work around the authorities. If the children can do that, the children need to respect the norms and customs of the society. But the parents themselves have to, on the pink side, you can see that the parents need to understand the child's life world. The child's life world is different and distinct from parents. Why? The children are growing up in Britain. They are natural born British people. They have a different way of doing things. They see it differently. They are relating differently to people. And so the parents cannot treat them as if they were living in Nigeria. So parents have to understand that. Vice versa, and the social workers have to do that as well. The social workers have to respect the parents' knowledges. And if you go round this slide, you will see that the respect is going round. Everybody gets a bit of it. And that reciprocity, that Honneth calls a mutuality, a collectivity, is what makes it work. That's what makes society work. We saw it through COVID, when it was as if the entire world was one family, everyone rooting for the other. So even in the midst of pain, complete strangers were looking out for the other. That's what this is about. And the final message is, where I'm doing this explanatory critique, I'm saying that there are things that are happening because Black immigrant experience is actually distinct. The reason it's different is that Black people have very distinct racial features from most other ethnicities and races. Have fat lips, fat nose, dark skin, kinky hair. That makes us stand out from an Asian, from a Chinese person. We are the only group that don't have silky hair. And because the Europeans in the past decided that those features are a negative, Afrophobia is a really huge, significant problem. And given that, it's nearly impossible for Black people to have exactly the same experience as any other group. And we shouldn't ignore that. The child queue issue is very unlikely to have happened to any other child if they were not Black. So the kinds of oppression that Black people receive in Western society is unique to them. And these are caused by these generative mechanisms. I'm going as far as eugenics on this. And so for that, social workers have to recognize the real differences between what is good enough Black parenting and what is good enough Eurocentric or Western parenting. Black people have to do something different. They hold their children tight. They know that their children are at risk from the social worker as well, from the police, from the authorities, because of Afrophobia. They know that. And so from this work, there is a theory that I developed, principles of good enough parenting from this research that I've called requisite parenting. And Barnardo's is sponsoring that, an evaluation of the theory, and it's going to be live and out early next year. And so I thank you very much for listening. I hope that the messages of respect that I'm sending out can go round and it's reciprocal, and that it's received in an affirmative way rather than a rejection of the real issues. And that I know is quite common, where society is so binary and people stay in their corners and there is no nuance. I'm hoping that I have helped to create that nuance, that we can have respect for one another, social workers, parents, and children. Thank you very much for listening. And I would say thank you in Igbo language, Imela. I'll stop sharing.
Cynthia, hi, it's Ruth here. I hope you can hear me okay. I could hear you loud and clear. It was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. We have a little bit of time now, hopefully for some questions and some ideas that people might want to share from the audience. There's a few things coming in from online, and there might be some questions in the room, and I don't know who's there, but maybe there's some questions in the room. So should we just ask if there are any questions in the room, and then perhaps, or anything that anybody wants to clarify there? They can have a little think about it. Have a little think about it, and then I'll go to the chat, and I'll see what we've got there. Well, there's basically an awful lot of applause, but I'd like to pick up with you a question that we've got here, and it's saying it's very refreshing to have a completely different perspective. This feels really fresh to me, so thank you very much. What do we need to do to get new, fresh voices around children's experiences and culture and family experiences? And did you draw on what inspired you apart from your curiosity? Was there any kind of academic inspirations or practice inspirations that kind of drew you to this, to bring your fresh voice to this really, really important area?
Okay, yeah. Yes, I am curious, but when you worked with young people, I used to speak to a lot of young people in London, a lot of Black African children, and it didn't matter what you said to them, there was a resistance, almost always. There was an underlying anger, almost, that I couldn't explain. And I've always been curious about that. And so I like to get into debates with them, and I'll say, okay, what about this? And they say, oh, you don't know them. The police, they are just so rude. They're so nasty. They stop us all the time. And, social workers, I don't want to talk to them. So there was a resistance that you could see there all the time. And I knew that to break down that resistance, you needed to have a conversation. You needed to talk to them a bit more, try and understand them. And then I thought, okay, I'd love to hear from their parents. What do their parents think? And it was so interesting to see the difference. The parents actually wanted them to work with the society, but the children felt that the parents were ignorant because their parents didn't understand their life world. So they came home, looking like young people, but the parents don't know exactly what they'd seen. That, you could have been in class and something was happening and you saw the white child treated just a bit better. Almost always, the children had this sense. And it's very troubling to us. And I think the authorities, and when I mean authorities, I mean people who are child safeguarding facing professionals, need to think about that a lot, because they are helping to build or to create a generation of children who do not believe that the society is just.
Thank you. That came over really clearly in that presentation. Thank you. I think there may be a question in the room. Is that right?
Yes.
Can people hear? Yeah, thanks. That was I really enjoyed that talk, and a lot of food for thought there. Thank you. My question: do you think then there are differences for you as a Black Nigerian social worker working with families? How do you think that relationship would be different compared to a white social worker? And building on that, can you give us a couple of top tips for white social workers? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the things you'll find is that the education of social workers in the UK is generic. And that means we use one theory or the same theories, we're taught the same principles, the same practice tools and models and things like that. So Black social workers as well as white social workers come through this same training. Now, when you go to the theories that are used, they stay with us because we're supposed to learn our trade so well that it stays with you. So a Black social worker thinks from a Eurocentric prism. Yep, and they apply the same thing to the Black parents that they meet. And a lot of Black social workers have the same slight disrespect for the parents. But you will find a few who are aware, who are conscious that knowledges have different values or strengths and are respected differently. And those who do are better social workers. And when they come in, they're able to relate differently with the parents. And so to answer your question, one of the things I think white social workers should do that will change the relationship instantly is to tell or explain to the parent that they understand their knowledge, or that they respect their knowledge, and that they recognize that they know something that they may not know. Why do they know that? They know their children's experiences outside. They know what's going to happen to their children if their children step out of line. So they know something. And those knowledges carried over from time, if the white social worker puts that out on the table straight away, it changes the dynamics because immediately respect is on the table. And if you respect somebody, it will come through. And if you don't respect somebody, it doesn't matter how nice you are. We know here in Britain, we say, speak softly, carry a big stick. It will still come through. The person will finally know that you got a big stick, even though you're speaking softly.
We have a question about kind of the practical implications of what you're raising here, and I wondered if you, for children's services, for social workers, what's been your thinking about how this relates to training, to changing attitudes, to changing skills and approaches? How far have you gone with taking your research into that kind of applied place?
With changing practice is, so the theory that developed from this research is already on, and I'm using it, but we're evaluating it now. And that theory has certain principles where the parents, the best things that the parents did, so how they, some of the things that they did well to become good enough parents, so the parents who've succeeded, what were they doing? I've kind of bottled that into this theory. And one of them I would put out here is, one of the principles of the theory that I'm going to put out here for the first time is spirituality. So Nigerians are very spiritual people. And in the West, being spiritual is disrespected almost. We have a saying, we don't do God. And that was from Alistair Campbell, Tony Blair's former spin doctor. We don't do God. But the Nigerian parents do God, and Black African parents do God. And when I mean God, I'm not talking about God as saying heaven and all that. I'm talking about being spiritual. They use that, being spiritual, to support their children. And in that, they're saying to their child, there is a higher power inside you, around you, that will help you overcome. So it's the idea of resilience. That's where that being spiritual comes from. And almost every Black parent who's done it well, even if they're completely, they're atheists and they have no religion whatsoever, they still hold on to something inside the child that will help the child stay strong in the face of racism, poverty, and oppression, that the child can still survive and thrive. So it's that idea of being spiritual that needs to come into our discussions, because if just that, it brings hope. It brings hope to the parents, it brings hope to the child. And that's not a term that we use much in the West. It's not recognized. That's one of the strengths of Black parenting that is not in our textbooks.
It's so interesting because social workers are often called amongst many other things, caught between a sense of needing to join with a family or with an individual, and then the objective, that sort of notion of the objective assessment and the distance. And I wondered how you understand that in the context of your research. Is that just purely an ethnocentric, Eurocentric, I should say, way of understanding the task of social work, of not even allowing that joining with, that closeness, that understanding, for instance, the spiritual elements? Or is it something about, or is there a tension there in social work in any, of almost all forms?
There is a tension there, but I also pick up that social workers that are slightly afraid of going down the lane of preaching, because that's what it sounds like when you say to somebody, there's something inside you and around you that can help you to stay strong, to overcome racism, overcome your challenges. And they're afraid to do that, I think. And also some social workers, I think that that's some kind of psychotherapy. They think that's that area of psychology. They're not linking it to their everyday job. That if social workers are actually corporate parents, because otherwise, why would someone be able to knock on my door and say they want to see my bedroom? They want to see my kitchen and my fridge because they want to see how I'm caring for my child. They've become a corporate parent. They've got that responsibility when you come in. And so to shy away from that kind of discussion means you only want to do it halfway. So there's all that tension. I'll only go so far as a social worker, and I wouldn't go there. The sense of I wouldn't touch that kind of issue, that spiritual issue.
Fantastic. So I don't know if there's anything else in the room, but I've got some more questions and comments online, some wonderful things online that I want to share with you. I'm going to give you another question. And this is, I'm sorry, I can't saw who it's from, so apologies for that, but wondered if you noticed any differences found between the values and fears of illegal migrant families and legal settled migrant families, and those who have also been born and who were born and have grown up in Britain, so kind of second generation. So whether your research captured any of those nuances between people's different sort of levels of immigration status, how settled they were, how long first, second generation, those sorts of issues.
Obviously, if you're still illegal, and I hate that term, nobody's illegal. If you're illegal, the fear is visceral, because the police could knock on your door and that's it, they can take you away. That's a different kind of fear. But even for all the other immigrants who've stayed in Britain for long, like me, the fear never actually leaves you. So if you look at some of the laws, the recent laws in the country, the immigration bill, and all those kinds of bills, they're really terrifying for immigrants, because you're thinking, I have to be the perfect immigrant, the deserving immigrant. If I step out of line for a minute, it's likely that I will get locked up and I will get deported. If a British citizen who was born here could be de-citizened and totally not have a country anymore, and I'm talking about Begum, the fear stays with you that you have to be the deserving immigrant. And so it never really leaves you. The fear doesn't help it. It's reinforced every day. And then the current political climate is really scary for everybody who can trace their parents to other continents and countries, especially if you've got slightly darker skin, if you've got brown skin, or if you've got black skin. It's much worse. And I'm standing here as a deserving immigrant, but still afraid that I can't step out of line. So it's a really terrible time, I think, to be an immigrant in Britain. That's I think the only way I can say it.
Thank you for sharing that. I would like to just read to you some of the comments that we have here. So lots of messages in this. Thank you so much from Adoyula. It's been very thought-provoking from somebody else. Thought-provoking being used again. And having a little look here. Brilliant. Wonderful. You should have a look at the chat afterwards in the recording. It'd be fantastic. There's a comment here. Nigerian parents trying to bring their children up based on their own cultural orientation and the new culture they find themselves in. This presentation is enlightening about that tension. So thank you. As from Adekola. And somebody else saying it's an extremely important, this is David here saying, extremely important and timely presentation, which gets to the heart of what social work is about. Social work starts with the client, the individual, the family, the community, where they are, where they are. This means understanding their conceptual world and their relationships. Our formal systems can easily take us away from that core principle. Would that be something that you would agree? It was a
yes,
something of what you were trying to convey?
Yes, totally. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And there's something here from Claire saying, great presentation. It's amazing to see the values that are very similar to our values in the Caribbean, namely Barbados, and a focus about how parents uphold values that they've brought from places of origin, and that some of those values can be eroded, and the families can feel as a result the risk of losing them. I wondered if there was something there in your presentation, just to finish on that sense of holding values, losing values, and adapting to the situation, and how that might have come through in your research as well.
Yeah. On that issue of how to adapt and things, I use the layers of critical realism. So reality in critical realism is layered, where you have the empirical, you have the actual, and then you have the real being the underlying, where you have generative mechanisms of power. And within that area, that really is it, because the empirical is kind of your experiences, the everyday thing. I don't like to dwell on those things. I think it's much lower. It's reality is really those generative mechanisms, and some of them things like norms. So very simple things that we don't think about because we just act them, we just do them. The parents who have come from wherever they've been and come to a new country, they're coming with their norms, and they come to a new country where the norms obviously have now generated laws, because that's how we get our laws. It's a real shift. So think about norms as being that generated mechanism level, which is really beneath the things that control you completely. And then suddenly it's a different norm. Can you imagine a tectonic shift? Those things that control you completely shifting. And it's important that social workers understand that. And I think that's where, if I had my way, I would teach every social worker critical realism. You understand that this is so fundamental, that it controls you without thinking. And so if you're going to work with someone who's come from a different society with different norms having, formed them, which control them completely, you've got to do it differently. And one of the best ways to do that is then to explicate it. So bring it out into the open. Identify it quite openly and talk about them. But what I found is we act in the moment, including social workers, everybody, people just act. We need to then go down, take a deep breath, and look beyond that empirical thing, the things that we can measure. We're very interested in measurement in social work. You want to measure whether the child had been hit, and if the child had been hit, was it a hand, there's a mark there. But all the things that you can't measure, the things beneath, the actual, we kind of lose interest in those things that we can't measure, because our society, Western society, is also really interested in measurement. It's all about the things that you can categorize and label and put in a box and organize it, and then you can draw your conclusions. So we work really with tools and models, we're not able to think outside the things that we can't measure or we can't see. And that, I think, is a problem in the ways that we work in social work.
Cynthia, we're going to have to finish there, but I just wanted to, that was a fantastic way to end, to that exhortation, that request that social workers are looking at all the layers and beneath the surface and are curious, and not just looking at the things we can easily measure, but actually understanding where things are coming from, so that we can really work with that and understand people and work alongside. Thank you so much. There are lots of fantastic other comments here that I'm sure you'll be able to see in the chat. This has been our inaugural Kay McDougall lecture. It's been my complete privilege and honour to help host this and to hear you speak this evening. So thank you so much. A huge vote of thanks from all of us. Those of us who in the room can clap, and those of us who online can clap. This will be recorded. This has been recorded and will be shared and available. I know there's been lots of people online listening live. Thank you all very much for coming, and we look forward to next year's lecture, our second one, but this our inaugural one with you, Cynthia. It's been a stunner. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody involved. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.